Peaceful life for this pioneering Viking clan. My name is Harvey Bodega, and today we're talking about Northgard. To overly summarize this game, Northgard is a real-time strategy game developed by Shiro Games and released in February of 2017, but is still receiving updates today. Like another great Viking game, you attempt to colonize an unknown continent, rich with natural resources, but occupied by hostile and unnatural creatures. Unlike that game, however, Northgard is mainly a real-time strategy game, but can easily be referred to as a colony simulator or city builder, an adventure or survival game, or even a 4X. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's start with the presentation. Visually, Northgard is fairly cartoony, but in a grounded way, reminiscent of some classic RTSs. The buildings, the foliage, the weather, the 2D art, and most enemies are really good, but I do think the male human character models have some strange proportions. I mean, they must really hit the upright rows or some shit because those shoulders and traps are cut. Sound is very well done, with epic music that makes you want to stroll into the mysterious beyond. Honestly, I expected it to be more of just battle drums with some Viking choir action, but it's more of an adventuring score. It's excellent. As for standard sounds, they do the job, are well crafted, and convey information of what's going on. They're good by any metric, but I have a subjective complaint about the audio callouts. As I mentioned previously, Northgard is a real-time strategy game with some 4X mechanical inspiration. Both of these genres often have audio callouts with a wonderfully memorable X factor. Let me show you what I mean. Dawn of War is an easy example, Chaos being a favorite of my brother and I.
The weak fight back!
Anything for the great powers.
Yes, master!
Grant us the gifts of the Chaos Gods, Great One!
For the dark gods!
Here are some other factions, though.
Beware the alien, the mutant, the heretic.
A challenge worthy of my skill.
What do you know of war?
Where's the fighting?
Okay, maybe that's unfair. Dawn of War is a Warhammer title, and they're meant to be ridiculous.
What?
Let's take Age of Empires 2 though, which is way less over the top, but its voice lines are delivered with such an endearing enthusiasm, ferocity, or calm.
Yes. Batal.
Bulden.
Heirloom.
Oh.
Hop. Ina.
On the 4X side, the Total War series nails voice callouts across the spectrum from grounded to ridiculous.
Yes! Closing for battle!
We accept this proposal only under great duress.
Where's the fight?
Where's the fighting?
The realm of souls.
Does better involve fighting?
The winds are rising.
I await!
Madness!
Let's take those and compare them to Northgard's. They aren't bad per se, but comparably mundane, almost just an environmental sound. I just feel the voice callouts were a missed opportunity. That being said, just because I spent more time nitpicking voice lines than praising the excellent sound design and music, doesn't mean the presentation is less than excellent. Overall, besides a few matters of personal preference, it's great. So the game presents well. Let's get back to the genre conversation. So how can Northgard be a colony sim, city builder, survival, adventure, 4X, and RTS game at the same time and not be a mess? Well, like one of those Korean-Mexican fusion taco trucks, somehow it just works. Whether you're playing the story, skirmish, or online game modes, let's get into how a Northgard game starts. You have to choose your clan, which we'll get deeper into later, select the game settings, and launch the game. After the RNG gods craft the world, you start with a town hall and a single hex, a few workers passively collecting food, and a small cache of resources. It really starts as that colony simulator with light 4X components. First things first, you have no idea what's going on around you, so building a scout camp is step one. Once assigning a worker to become a scout, they'll scout out the hexes, eventually getting eaten by a bear or something, but allowing you to see surrounding dangers. Like a 4X, each hex has different resources, bonuses, or occupants, and where you expand initially is likely driven by what you need. At this early stage, you have to obtain what many of the early European settlers of the Americas failed to find: food. Fish, fertile fields, or hunting grounds can generate food that feeds your people, but is also spent to colonize new hexes. Unsurprisingly, if you run out of food, your people start slowly starving to death. Once you've colonized a food resource hex, you have to build the associated resource building and assign villagers to work it. Of course, in order to build these buildings, you need wood, which can also be spent to repair buildings, and needs to be burned in the winter to keep your people warm. After securing your food and wood income, any growing clan will need tenement apartments to increase population capacity. Then, other buildings will become necessary shortly afterward. Your colony's infrastructure development has its limitations, though, apparently set by the clan zoning board or your local colony HOA. Each hex has a limit of between 2 and 5 buildings, and multiples of the same building cannot be built on the same hex, with the exception of one of the DLC factions.
Warlock of Skavenblight.
Each building has a maintenance cost, which is paid for in crowns, the game's currency. Other than building maintenance, crowns have a lot of uses, like training workers into soldiers, upgrading hexes to allow an additional building, and purchasing your clan's chieftain. When being upgraded into soldiers, workers can be trained as balanced melee warriors, tanky defensive shield bearers, or high damage ranged axe throwers, depending on the military building at which they're trained. Soldiers have their own population capacity, which is increased by these military buildings, which takes more hexes to create room, wood to build, money to maintain, and more food to colonize and feed these new units. It's all a balancing act. Balancing your economy and military is vital. Nothing could be worse than joining a new clan to be a fisherman, only to have your work interrupted by the products of forbidden necromancy. Then again, if you favor the military too much, well, you can't eat your sword. Besides these more tangible resources, you have to balance happiness, lore, and fame as well. I would think of lore and fame like civilizations, science, and culture, both providing toggleable victory conditions and their own bonuses. Lore is gained passively, or by assigning additional units to lore stones or raiding missions. Fame can be gained by raiding too, but mostly requires combat, colonization, and expansion. Happiness is hugely important as it determines the rate at which new workers join your clan. Unlike New York City, if you have crappy buildings, things are too crowded, and your people are being attacked by spirits from across the Vale, no one will move there. However, it's worth mentioning that having a place to get drunk will make people happier. Lastly, there are 2 different minerals to mine and spend on upgrades, and a handful of other buildings to advance your clan. There's a lot of mechanics to balance here, and each clan interacts with these parameters and resources in a different way. Some factions may not be able to achieve certain victory conditions at all, while others may have their own special conditions. You may be playing a faction that favors food, combat, lore, fame, etc., and each will build in a different order, offer specific bonuses, and have a few special units. Most of Northgard's clans are DLC, which, in my opinion, are steep at $4.99 each since there are so many and several are incredibly gimmicky. The Clan of the Rat, though, is my favorite.
Harness to the power.
In addition to having to learn how to capitalize on your specific clan's strengths and weaknesses, another thing to manage is that most years have a random event. It may be an earthquake, a particularly tough winter, a rat infestation, or your longboats being devoured by the Kraken. The randomized maps in Skirmish and Online mode do provide the map with a lot more character, providing each starting location with different strengths and weaknesses, but can be a little punishing. Starting with undefended tiles with food and woodcutting bonuses nearby is ideal, but sometimes there can be 4 wolves in there. Depending on the clan you're playing, this is either no problem or a frustrating setback. That being said, the beginning of the game is slow-paced, almost relaxing. However, since expansion is necessary for more resources and space, you are on a crash course with other factions and neutral camps. Diplomacy is limited to trading, which you can do with anyone, but there really isn't a peaceful way to engage with other clans. You can befriend and gain bonuses from trading with neutral races, but combat with some or all of these groups is almost certain. Come on, it's not a United Nations simulator, it's a Viking game. They weren't known for their politics. Combat is standard RTS affair, but broken up by the game's hexes as if it were a 4X. This is a cool and unique system, but it can involve some frustrating micromanagement. I'll explain. In the real-time battles of the Total War series, you can lose thousands of units in a battle that you win, and get them back almost as fast with the replenishment system. Since Northgard's conflict is scaled down so much, your clan may only have 50 people near maximum. Each individual unit's death can be incredibly punishing, as they can take quite a while to replace. If you lose 6 soldiers in one fight, you may have lost the game. Combat is achieved by moving military units into an adjacent hex to attack, or by defending one of your own when the enemy moves into it. When this happens, every unit defends the attacked hex. Let's say you're across the map and a random wolf runs into your hex with 3 or 4 worker units. It's no question that the group of workers will kill the wolf, but they individually lose a one-on-one with the wolf. Unfortunately, Northgard doesn't have loom. So a worker far away from the others in the same hex can be killed before help arrives, as others don't run over to assist until the enemy's first attack. If a Draugr lumbers into my land, it can kill several workers before being killed even when tanking arrows from a defensive tower. Preventing units from dying from these random attacks is not hard, it just kind of feels like another settlement needs your help. Since Northgard does not have mouse scrolling, just WASD, you have to jump on the minimap or slowly scroll over to the attack, although the speed of scrolling is adjustable in the settings. Once arriving at the attacked hex, in order to best avoid workers dying, dance them in between adjacent hexes to have the enemy unit switch targets. This doesn't feel like I'm a strategic wizard, it just feels like I'm being given busy work that I'm cheesing through. Running your military back to defend a square oftentimes isn't possible or worth it, especially since they run so slowly. Your army may be around a dozen soldiers in the mid-game, so using them to defend a territory that may or may not be attacked by a wolf is likely a waste. Coastal tiles are especially annoying for this, as a random yearly event and 2 factions can launch attacks from the sea. This is more than an annoyance though, as workers do not produce resources with their tiles under attack. If your main food or wood hex is attacked, it can set you back quite a bit even if no workers die. In addition to having their resource gathering paused, a healer has to stop gathering food to heal the injured workers, which are less effective at resource gathering themselves while injured. They also can negatively affect your clan's happiness by being wounded. So one little wolf or draugr attack can negatively affect growth, food income, and slow the injured workers' resource gathering while they are slowly healed. Unfortunately, this frustrating micro is necessary in battles with other clans as well. Since replacing units can take a long time depending on your clan's happiness, battles are best conducted by retreating nearly killed units out of the hex to get to safety and healing within your own territory. There is only one standard range unit, the Throwing Axeman, and running speed is standard across all human soldiers, so you can't always finish off these enemies as they run away with low health. This really makes the hexes seem kind of gamey and arbitrary, and encourages a lightning attack strategy with this incremental retreat. I feel that there are several ways that this can be improved. To minimize frustrating micro on defending tiles, defensive towers could do a lot more damage to neutral creatures, or call all the workers in a hex to it prior to them turning around and counterattacking the creature. Even if there isn't a tower, units within the same hex can run over to help when the enemy enters the hex rather than when it performs its first attack. To address the concern of soldiers being non-disposable, maybe make military units no longer count against the civilian population cap, just the military one, and can't change back into standard workers once trained. That way your civilian population keeps growing, but has to produce enough food to feed the soldiers and money to replace them if they die. Not only would soldiers be more expendable, but there would be times when you need food so badly that it's strategically advantageous for you to pull a King David and send Uriah to the front lines. Also, if wounded military units ran slower, then pursuing enemy forces could chase them down before they escape. I know these suggestions would create balance issues of their own. Maybe these could be for a specific new DLC faction or lore or fame technologies. I don't know, just a few thoughts. So that's how Northgard can simultaneously be a survival adventure RTS 4X colony simulator. It's a really fun combination of genres. With combat management as my main critique, I have to point out that some of these frustrations can be minimalized with adjusted map customizations. Don't want wolves randomly eating your lumberjacks? Turn them off or make them easier. We always have the story mode, which is the standard series of skirmish missions, but functions as a great tutorial. Lastly, you can always use mods and change whatever is available. There are a lot of ways to enjoy Northgard. I really enjoy this game's unique fusion of characteristics. Although truly an RTS, it has a more relaxed tone, so you don't have to have a StarCraft player's APM to even be competitive. If colony simulators, city builders, 4Xs, or RTSs are a favorite genre of yours, I would happily recommend it, but I wouldn't pay full price for all the DLCs. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to have more content for you soon. Thank you.
Please, no more kicking.